You are wonderful. You may not feel that way. Driving here, I was saying to Isolde, everything looks so dry. I saw a large, one of those flatbed trucks with loads of Christmas trees on them. They look dry already. I don't know what's going to happen come Christmas. So many things just seem just on the edge of tinder. And we've had little fires popping up around different places, some larger than we would like, and it's a warning to be careful. But it's not just nature that seems so close to catching fire. The whole culture does. We've been through a hard time with an election, and people are on tiptoes. Some are celebrating, but I think most people, no matter how they voted, are like, what's next? What's next? There's a level of apprehension. I'm going to say something, some of you may jump back and think, what's she going to do? Well, you never know, but anyhow, I was recently in line and I heard some people going at it. And it had started with a-hole, and then next thing I know it was F-U, and I thought, are they going to go through the whole alphabet? What's going to happen here? It just kept escalating. And then just a couple of days ago, I had to go in for my annual physical, and a week before I'd gone in for blood work like you have to do. And then the physician's assistant had said to me, well, there was something we didn't test for, so you need to go back. So I went back in at the end of the exam to get blood work done again. And she's never been an exceptionally cheery person, so it wasn't a time to make vampire jokes or anything like that with her. And so we chit-chatted about different things, and then she finished up, and I said, well, I've seen you twice in a couple of weeks. I said, I think this is the end for a while before I have to come back. So I said, Happy Thanksgiving. And she says, yeah, Happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, and all that. And she filled in another 4-letter word. And I thought, the whole culture, our language, the things we easily fling out there, it's something that I didn't grow up with, not just in my own family, but generally in the culture. We were not so quick to hurl those words around. So it's caused me over the last few weeks to be thinking about what are God's 4-letter words in contrast to so much of what we're hearing, where people are just on edge and it doesn't take much to tip us over. Well, there is a verse that I've used before when I taught, and it's one of my favorite verses. It's from Jeremiah, the 6th chapter and the 16th verse. And it says, stand, or stop, we could say as a 4-letter word. Stand at the crossroads and look. There's a 4-letter word. Ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good 4-letter word, way is. And you will find, 4-letter word, rest, 4-letter word, for your soul, 4-letter word. So stand at the crossroads and look. Ask where the good way is. Ask where the ancient paths is. And I forgot an important phrase. And walk in it. A 4-letter word. Walk in it. And you will find rest for your souls. Who doesn't want that, no matter how you voted? Who doesn't want rest for our souls? Who doesn't want to find out what is the good way? What are the ancient paths? And then to somehow have the courage to walk in it. If you read on the next little verse, it said, but you would not. This is Jeremiah, the weeping prophet, the one who had proclaimed what God told him to proclaim, but he still ended up going to captivity with the rest of them, no matter how much he had followed God himself. And that's the challenge within the culture. How do we stay looking for the ancient paths, seeking what the good way is, asking for it, walking in it, and then we find rest for our souls. So, let's take a look at some of these verses, some of these four-letter words, but I want to read something to you first. It's from Psalm, one that you're probably very familiar with, if I tell you what it is. O Lord, Psalm 139. You have examined my heart. You know everything about me. You know when I sit down or stand up. You know my every thought when far away. You chart the path ahead of me. You tell me where to stop and rest. Every moment you know where I am. You know what I'm going to say before I say it, Lord. You both precede and follow me. You place your hand of blessing on my head. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too great for me to know. I read something recently that said that 8 years after Columbus had discovered America, another English sea captain had gone to King Henry VII and had laid out a map. And on that map were territories that had not yet been explored. And over some of it was written, "Here be dragons, here be demons." And the person who had been writing about Psalm 139 had said if David had had a map laid out before him, he would have said, "Here be God, here be God, here be God." We're in a culture right now that's full of finger pointing. Here be demons, here be dragons, here be God. Here be God. We are his children, children of the Most High God. And in this kind of a setting, in this kind of a culture, in this kind of a fragile, just ready to flame up kind of a word like the world, like the woods around us that are so fragile and dry, we need to be the ones proclaiming by how we live, here be God, here be God, here be God. So what are some of these four-letter words? There are so many. Why don't you pop off with some of the ones that come to your mind when you think of four-letter words that are in the Bible, that God might use? Yes, Claire.
Love.
Love. There you go. That's the biggie.
Hope.
Others.
Hope.
Hope. Others.
Here.
Here. Did you say fear?
Here.
Here. Okay. No, both of them were. Here be God. Here be ears. Hear. Hear the word of the Lord. Hear.
Walk.
Somebody said something.
Walk.
Walk. Yes.
Still. Still. Be still. S-T-I-L-L.
Four. Four-letter words. S-T-I-L.
Still with one L.
It's okay. It's okay. Let's see. What can we call it? Quit.
Holy.
What?
Holy.
Holy.
Pray.
Pray.
Call.
Call.
Soul. Soul.
Soul.
Care. Care.
You know what? I just encourage you sometime, instead of all the stuff that's out there that we can be listening to and reading, to head to the Bible and just start looking at some of those words that you've just said today. Look up all kinds of words on hope, on care, on cast your cares on him, on call on the name of the Lord, on fear, on whatever it is. But you'll have a great time. And it will remind you that here be God. Here be God. Not here be demons. Here be dragons. Here be God. So let's start with walk for today. I can still hear my Norwegian grandfather standing by the piano and asking me to play while he would sing, "When we walk with the Lord in the light of his word, but the glory he sheds on his way." Do you know that, Yanis? He would say, "Yeah, I know that." Yeah. Walk. Walk. John 6, 2 John 6 says, "And this is love, that we walk in obedience to his commands. As you've heard from the beginning, his command is that you walk in love." There's a wonderful quote from Martin Luther King Jr. I was so taken by this, but in 1963, when all kinds of things were going on in the civil rights movement and the marches that were happening, they were given a card, those that were going to march, that said, "Walk and talk in the manner of love. For God is love. Observe with both friend and foe the ordinary rules of courtesy. Refrain from the violence of fist, tongue, or heart." The nonviolent movement seeks justice and reconciliation, not victory. Imagine if we carried such a card around with us, children of the Most High God. We would be saying to people around us, "Here be God. Here be God." Listen to it again. Walk and talk in the manner of love, for God is love. Observe with both friend and foe the ordinary rules of courtesy. Refrain from the violence of fist, tongue, or heart. The nonviolent movement seeks justice and reconciliation, not victory. Walk. Walk. Second word, because that's from our overall verse from Jeremiah. Good. What is the good way? Some people think it's just bring prayer back into the classroom. Some people think Christian nationalism. Some people think plaster the 10 Commandments on the wall in every schoolroom. What is the good way? Micah 6:8 says he showed you what is good and what he requires. Do what's right. Love mercy and walk humbly with your God. Hebrews 10:24 says, "And let us consider how to provoke one another to love and good deeds." We know more than we do. How do we provoke? We provoke each other, but not toward love and good deeds. We're big into rights, but sometimes protecting my rights is so that I think I can say or do whatever I want to do. G.K. Chesterton said, "To have a right to do something is not the same as to be right in doing it." To have the right to do something is not the same as to be right in doing it. How to provoke each other, urge each other, push each other, nudge each other towards love and good deeds. All right, why don't you talk about some of the things right now that this church does that encourages doing good deeds, and loving each other. There are lots of things happening here.
Well, I think these Sunday morning lectures are fantastic. You know, I always go away with something very meaningful that I've learned. And just a PS to my statement, there's a wonderful book written called Gilead, and which I would encourage everybody to read, and I'm embarrassed I can't remember the name of the author who wrote it.
Marilyn Robinson.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
And I think that's one thing that's really resonated with me that I try and incorporate into my daily life.
so Claire, can you all hear? Like this, huh? Just checking. You heard that, you probably felt it. Claire had said, Sunday sermons, things that provoke you to think and consider what's ahead. And reminder that Christianity is a life, not just a talk. All right, anything else? Some other
I think
thing?
of the Stephen
Yes.
Ministry.
What?
I think of the Stephen Ministry Program,
Yeah,
which cares for people who need help at any time in their lives.
Stephen Ministries, right. Others?
Coffee hour.
Coffee hour, right. That's a special ministry, it's a help. That aroma draws me in like bacon.
Same.
Singing,
Nice word.
yeah.
The kids programs,
The what?
the kids program.
Oh, yeah, the kids
and
program, for
all the
sure.
love that's poured into them and
Right.
encouraging them to
Right.
live out that love in their life.
Just going to say that a friend of mine walked the Santiago Trail, 500-mile Santiago Trail, and when he was done, he said, walking is the right pace for a human being.
Oh,
Having driven cars and trucks and planes,
Yeah.
trains, and automobiles.
hmm,
So that word walk, for him anyway, has become really significant.
yeah. Yeah,
Jan, the rest, a little part of that verse that you're referring to, the provoking, we were just studying in women's Bible study, but it's continue to meet together,
yeah,
right? I mean, that's kind of what we're
Yeah.
talking about, but,
Yeah.
but I think that's important to,
Yeah.
and that's how we provoke each other,
yeah,
by getting to know each other in
Right.
small groups, large groups, any kind
right.
of way.
Communion. Eucharist.
Eucharist. How about beyond these walls?
Yeah, a lot of work in the past has been put into the front of our new look of
Yeah.
our church and the surrounding areas. And I'm wondering if we can reflect that also as a congregation in the new look, or how we, I don't know how to say it.
Looking outward toward our community.
Well,
Yeah.
next Sunday, Mark and everybody, is Christ the King Sunday. It's also a day we're going to be dedicating this wonderful area out here and thanking people, but we're going to begin by thanking God for his gift, his generosity to us. Thanking each other for the generosity that you all have been a part of and helping this happen. And also, we're going around and inviting neighbors to come who have abutted this and been curious and walked their dogs through here and walked through this area, curious, to welcome them. So be aware, we don't know how many will show up, but we're hopeful that a number will, and we'll get a chance for the church to be outside where we're supposed to be and welcome the people that are around us as we welcome and greet each other. So it's a super opportunity next Sunday. I don't know if it rains, we'll be inside or what we'll do, but anyhow. So, walk, good. The third one is look. You know, it says ask where the good way is. Look. Moses to Joshua. You know, I always thought that was such a gripping thing and hard when I read it first, that Moses, because of when he struck the rock, he wasn't going to get to cross into the promised land. It said you'll only get to see it or look from afar. But then what does he do? Not all of us do well when we don't win. What do? He blesses Joshua. It's part of what God asks him to do, and he does it. He strengthens Joshua, who had helped strengthen him in the last part of his years of leading the balky children of Israel, had helped hold up his arms when he was weary. And he says, to him. Because he was warning them about idols, and he reminds them, Moses, before he's going, teach your kids, teach your grandchildren, and he says, be careful, don't forget. But then he says in these last words to the children of Israel, he says, but if you seek the Lord your God, you will find him if you look for him with all your heart and with all your soul. That's Deuteronomy 4:29. So it says, if you seek the Lord your God, you will find him. If you look for him with all your heart, with all your soul, you'll find him. So it's good now and then to stop, ask where the good way is, ask where the ancient paths are, to look, to walk in it, and you'll find rest for your souls. In Luke 6:41 it says, why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? There are lots of things in the Bible that talk about where we look. Philippians 2:4 says, each of you should look not only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others. And that's what we have people doing through Stephen Ministry, through bringing coffee on a Sunday and plunking it in a basket for people at the food pantry. That's what we're doing when we tend senior citizens in different places and want to look for ways to invite and bring them here to be part of something that can infuse hope into them and bless their days with the sounds of music and other things. 4 is fear. It's rampant. As I was saying before, it's too easy to go, here be devils, here be dragons, instead of here be God. You know, a man named Weber, who, I can't remember now what he was teaching, but he, did he teach at Fuller Seminary, I think? He also taught at Wheaton College. But anyhow, he had said, when we say that, how do we put it? In the Lord's Prayer, you know, to not take the name of the Lord, when he says in the don't take the name of the Lord your God in vain. He said something interesting. He said he thinks that's more that don't live as though God doesn't exist. Don't take the name of the Lord your God in vain. He said that's more like don't live as if God doesn't exist. Here be devils, here be dragons, here be God. Live like we say we believe, that God is. God has a purpose for us. God loves this world, left and right and center. God loves this world. In 2 Timothy 1:7, it says, for God hasn't given us a spirit of fear, but of love and of power and a sound mind. Isaiah 4:10 says, fear not, for I'm with you. Don't be discouraged, for I'm your God. I'll strengthen you and help you. I'll uphold you with my righteous right hand. Fear not, fear. I'll help you, help. I'll hold you with my hand. Those 4-letter words are all over the place to lift us and encourage us and give us hope, to live each day as if here be God. Here be God. Proverbs 9:10. Now this is another twist on fear. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. What kind of fear is that? Oh. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. What's that kind of fear?
Reverence.
Reverence.
Awe.
Awe. At night when I'm praying, one of the things I pray is from Psalm 61:5. You have given me the heritage of those who fear your name. I'm so grateful for that old grandpa when we walk with the Lord. He grew up an orphan. He had a hard life in Norway. He was lonely, angry at God, after seeing most of his family wiped out by a plague. And he was sent off to live with a farmer and his wife who had him shoveling out the manure, doing all the hard jobs that none of the other kids in the family wanted to do. But somehow he got invited to a little home prayer meeting. And in that prayer meeting, he heard about Jesus. And that Jesus loved him. And Jesus had a purpose for his life. And Jesus saw him and cared about him. And something happened in my grandfather's heart. He played the guitar and he would go around singing songs that he would sometimes make up about Jesus. And people got to know this funny little orphan kid going around, growing up. Now he's a teenager. And there were a group of pastors in Oslo that heard about this kid. And now he's like 18. And they decide to send him to the United States so that he can go to a seminary and learn more about God. And they sent him to the University of Chicago. And there, Bethel College had a seminary that was connected there at the time. And my grandfather, he lived in the basement. He stoked the furnace so he could stay there for free. And there was an old Norwegian woman that was part of the staff there that would bring food to him so that he could eat. Here be God. Here be God. Do we know what we're looking for? Are we looking around us to see ways that we can underscore for this culture? Here be God. Not by Christian nationalism. Not by slapping the Ten Commandments on a wall or demanding we say a prayer in class. But by living by what we say we believe. Who we say we put our trust in. Here be God. Here be God. So I say at night, you have given me the heritage of those who fear your name. You know, my daddy didn't grow up with that kind of a heritage. He was the first Christian in his family. And you know, I think about the roles that others have played. And you know, we can do like this beautiful work out here. It draws attention. But most of all, what we're called to do is the kind of thing that's face to face. Few people will just come on in here off the streets. We hope maybe the music, some outside next Sunday, will make people curious. We hope hearing little children sing "This Little Light of Mine" may draw some other kids that are curious. We don't know. But there's nothing like being a good neighbor, living beside people and among people, as if we really believe, here be God, and somehow it's included this neighbor. It's included this person that I interact with at work. It's included this person that's a friend of my children. It's included this person that's a friend of my grandchildren. Here be God. Here be God. Well, the perfect segue from fear to love is 1 John 4:18. Perfect love casts out fear. How does that happen? How does perfect love cast out fear? I get why you're sitting there and not saying anything, because it's like, what in the world, God? How'd you say something like that? What does perfect love even look like? does it cast out fear?
The Trinity.
What?
The Trinity?
The Trinity? Yeah. They sure got along. You know, some of what I also have wondered if when you're full of love, there's not so much room for fear. Love in the understanding that God is over all, that God gets what we don't get, that God sees what we don't see, God knows what we don't know, and God is not sitting there wringing his hands. God is not sweating. Now what? Love.
Perfect love has a quiet confidence.
What?
Perfect love has a quiet confidence.
Yeah.
We often think of confidence as self-righteous or as loud. But perfect love's confidence is grounded and doesn't need to yell.
Yeah. It's back to the verse with the 5-letter word. Still. Be still and know that I'm God. That's it, Gail. Yeah. Anybody else? I'm going to tell you a little story. From my Norwegian grandparents. I learned so much from them, especially from my grandmother. But at this time, oddly enough, knowing how my grandfather grew up, they'd been pastors and missionaries in Canada and in the United States. But at this time, they were in Brooklyn, New York, where my granddaughter is now, has just moved there. And in Brooklyn, they were the heads of a children's home, an orphanage, a Norwegian one, very specialized. No, but these children, what had happened, a lot of people had come over from the old country, and then sometimes because of sickness or poverty, one thing or another, they'd had to give up a child, or this child had to go to the orphanage. And the ones that my grandmother, who was the mother of 7 children, were especially attached to were the little ones, the little 2, 3, 4-year-old children that really had known no mother other than my grandmother. And did any of you read to your children, read the book Madeline? You would see all those beds lined up in a row. Well, that's how it looked when I, as a kid, would go and visit my grandparents in New York. All those iron beds lined up in a row, and my grandmother would sit in the doorway of one of the long rooms like that, and at nighttime she would tell them a story, and she would sing them songs, and she would pray over them. And with the little ones, she would tuck them into their cribs, pray over them, sing to them. So, and every now and then, they would have what she would call a state of the home address. And all the children, from the ones that were 17 years old and to the littlest ones, would gather in the living room to talk over whatever needed talking over. But at age 18, they had to leave. And many of them went into the military because it provided structure and income and some kind of a future for them. But I remember one of them coming to my grandmother, and when he was having to move out, and said, Momo, when I go away now, where will my home be? And she said, wherever I am. Wherever I am. There be demons, there be dragons, there be God. And so she was going to have to go in to have surgery. And so she, in the state of the home address, she'd called them all together and said, now, children, tomorrow I have to go to the hospital to to get some surgery done. And I'll be gone for a little while. But it's okay, don't you worry, Papa will be here. Well, they worried, because Papa was not the one they wanted in charge. And she said, but I'll be back. And so I will pray for you while I'm gone. And God will watch over you. God be here. And so she went to have the surgery done. And back then you stayed in the hospital until you got better. And so she was gone. You caught it. And so the day came when she was in word and travel that Mama was coming back today. She was going to be back today. So the little ones were all excited. All the kids wanted her back, but the little ones were so excited. So when she came through the door, the little ones went running to do what they usually did, hang on to her and jump up. And she said, no, 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 no. She said, you can't touch me right now, but you come on in here. Come on into the bedroom, and I will get on one of these beds and lie down, and you little ones, you get on the other bed, and I will tell you a story about Jesus. How do we spur one another on to love and good deeds? It flows out of the heart. And so she curled up on that bed, and these 5 little ones sat on the bed, swinging their legs, all excited to hear another story from Momo. She said, as I began to tell the story, she said, the one on the end found my sweater and hung on to it. And she said, I continued to tell the story, and the next one had the sleeve. And she said, before long, my sweater was stretched across all 5 of the children. She said, I thought about that for a long time. She said, I said, you can't touch me, but they could touch something that belonged to me. And that was enough. And then she said to me, Yanis, I know you love Jesus. You can't touch him, but you can touch those that belong to him. And let that be good enough. Love. How do we spur each other on to love and good deeds? G.K. Chesterton said, to love means loving the unlovable. To forgive means forgiving the unpardonable. Faith means believing the unbelievable. And hope means hoping when everything seems hopeless. So our 6th word is come. Come. I thought about how much I would love it when my dad would say, come to Daddy, come to Papa, come to Mama, come. That's such a welcoming, wonderful word to come. It says in Matthew 11:28, come unto me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Look at all those 4-letter words. Come, I will. What do you do? Give. Who? You. Rest. Well, it also says in Isaiah 55:1, come all you are thirsty. Anybody thirsty? Come and drink. Even if you have no money, come. Take your choice of wine or milk. It's free. It's free. We're studying a wonderful book, a challenging book in a book group at Christ Church. You can still join, I'm sure. But the title of the book is Free of Charge by Miroslav Volf. It's giving and forgiving in a culture that is stripped of grace. Give, free of charge. Come to me, you who are thirsty, hungry. No charge, free of charge. Grace is a 5-letter word, like still, but grace is a gift. That's a 4-letter word. Free of charge, undeserved, gift of God. We've been given so much. Some of you know this story, but there's more to it that I just recently found out. When my grandparents first moved from Canada, they moved to Chicago, and he was a pastor of a Norwegian American church there in Logan Square in Chicago. And when my mom would be walking to high school, she went to a large high school. She was like maybe in 9th grade, 10th at the time, and her mother had said to her, "Now, Margaret, a couple of houses down, there's a young girl who, because of certain disabilities, she cannot go to school. She cannot get out and play. She cannot do things that you and the rest of us can do. Now, I want you to stop by, and I want you to play with her after school." What? Yeah, I want you to do that. You say you love Jesus. This is one way you can love Jesus. So my mama said, over the years, no matter the homework I had, no matter what I had to do, I had to stop by and play with this girl who was so housebound and in a wheelchair and could hardly communicate. And she said, "I'm a teenager and I'm playing dolls with her. I'm doing whatever I could do." And she said, I grew to love her. And she said, when it came time for me to go to graduate from high school, they had a gift for me. And the gift was this plaque. And the plaque said on it, "He giveth more grace," by a woman named Annie Johnson Flint. That little plaque hung over our kitchen sink all my growing up years. And after my mama died, it was one of the things that I really wanted to have. It was such a connection to her, such a connection to grace, to this gift that God has given to us that we are to extend to others and say, in effect, "Here be God. Here be God." And so I learned, I always saw Annie Johnson Flint on the name, and so some of you may know it, but it's, "He giveth more grace when the burdens go greater. He sendeth more strength when the labors increase. To added affliction, he addeth his mercy. To multiplied sorrows, his multiplied peace." It goes on, but then I said, who was this Annie Johnson Flint? Well, she suffered from severe arthritis. Not at first, she was just a little kid. But when she was a little kid, her mom died. And when she was 5 years old, her dad died. Her mom died in childbirth, so there was a little baby sister that she was 3 years older from. And so in the will, the parents had willed her and her little baby sister to the Flints, so Annie Johnson Flint. The Flints were Christians. They went to a Baptist church, and they brought Annie and the baby sister to this little church. And there, when she was 8 years old, Annie invited Jesus into her heart. And she loved Jesus. And she decided that someday when she grew up, she wanted to be a concert pianist. But then she thought, I also love writing poems, so I'm going to write poems and be a concert pianist. Well, she began to get arthritis, and it was severe arthritis. But she wrote these poems. She wrote wonderful poems, and this one, "He giveth more grace." And then she had another one called "God Hath Not Promised," and both of those were so well received. While she still could, she hand drew them and wrote them, made these little books, and a publisher picked them up and began to distribute them through the Sunday School Times and other kinds of ways of communicating that. And that provided income, because now She's a little girl because she's a teenager with her sister 3 years younger, because now both the parents who had adopted them had died. So she's alone. You think, how much can a kid handle? You know, she was born in 1866, and one of the things that was so interesting, it said that when she died at age 66, that the obituary called her the poet of helpfulness. She, who was so that toward the end she could just tap out with knuckles on a typewriter the words for her poetry. How do we spur one another on to love and good deeds? How do we proclaim through our life, God be here? God be here. Anyhow, I love finding that out about her and what she had done, but in God Hath Not Promised, I thought about Johnny Erickson, who so many know about, and how she's blessed people through things she has written and through her music, but just how she has lived a life so full of joy when she could have been so bitter and so withdrawn. So anyhow, on the God Hath Not Promised, sky's always blue. Now remember, this is the Victorian period, so you say things like this. Flower-strewn pathways all our lives through. God hath not promised sun without rain, joy without sorrow, peace without pain. God hath not promised we shall not know toil and temptation, trouble and woe. He hath not told us we shall not bear many a burden, many a care. God hath not promised smooth roads and wide, swift easy travel needing no guide. Never a mountain rocky and steep, never a river turbid and deep. But God hath promised strength for the day, rest for the labor, light for the way, grace for our trials, help from above, unfailing sympathy, undying love. I don't know. That makes me want to sing Amazing Grace. Anybody want to sing Amazing Grace? Come on, we can do that. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we know the days to sing God's praise. And when we first begun. So the last word is sing. Psalm 89:1 says, I will sing of the Lord's great love. When I'm having a hard time and feel myself sliding into a pit of worry or despair or concern, I put on music. Music I can just count on is the drug I most need to just lift my spirits. And on this day, knowing that I have friends and family in North Carolina, in Michigan, in Arizona, and we don't agree on a lot of things, I need to say no more. But still, Amazing Grace links us. Love links us. That we're family. We care about each other. And I always assume I don't know what all went behind their choices. But I know one thing. They love their families. They love this country. They love me. They love God. And I leave a lot of these other big question marks up to God. But I had an interesting thing happen. And when I put on this music, I decided what I needed was music that connected me to my Southern background and to my Midwestern, and that was the Gaithers. So I put the Gaithers on, and they're cranking out all these old things that I grew up with, like I'll Fly Away, Old Glory. You don't know that because you're in the Episcopal Church, of course. But songs like that, and God Put a Rainbow in the Sky. And then that one that I just loved so much growing up. Well, let us have a little talk with Jesus. Let him tell all about our troubles. Will hear my faintest cry. He will answer by and by. And while I was having a little talk with Jesus, there are a couple workers that have been working around in the condo. We've been having all kinds of inside and outside work being done up there. These two are from Guatemala. They were brothers. Their English was coming along, but I knew them and I liked them. And they'd been working there and in the house. And so I had cranked up this and I was tapping my feet to what had come on to interrupt my little talk with Jesus. And that was, when the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. And so, you know, when the trumpet of the Lord shall sound and time shall be no more. And all of a sudden, Minor, who was working in another room, came out and said, I like that music. I said, me too. And then he went back. A little while later, he came out and he said, I'll be there. And I said, you never know. You never know who's around, who is also wondering, God, you be here? Are you here? And when they left for the day, he said, see you there. I said, see you there. You know, our songs matter. Our words matter. How we live. Are we living a life that proclaims to our families, to our neighbors, our colleagues, God be here. God be here. I pray that for you, me, all of us. Amen.